She texted from the airport. Surprise! I booked us a couple's retreat in Tulum. $6,000 on your card. I never agreed to go. I replied, have a great trip. Then I canceled the card, reported it as unauthorized, and changed my locks. When she landed and her return ticket was canceled too. 32 male, work in risk management for a commercial insurance firm, which basically means my entire professional life revolves around identifying anomalies, assessing liabilities, and paying close attention to the fine print. You could say spotting red flags is a professional hazard. I keep my finances locked down, check my accounts daily, and I don't mess around with loose ends. My girlfriend and I have been dating for just under 2 years. We didn't officially live together. She maintained a lease on a studio apartment downtown, claiming she needed a place closer to her office for early shifts, and honestly, I valued having my own space. But over time, she practically moved in. She kept a drawer closed, all her expensive skincare products in my bathroom, and a spare key on her keyring. I covered the vast majority of our shared expenses: dinners, concert tickets, weekend trips. I made significantly more money than she did, and I honestly didn't mind treating her. What I did mind was the growing entitlement. It started small. Little passive-aggressive comments about how my annual bonuses should be used for us instead of my investment portfolio, or getting visibly annoyed when I wouldn't upgrade her phone on my personal cellular plan. I ignored the red flags because I really wanted the relationship to work. That was a mistake. Then came a quiet Thursday afternoon in late October. I was sitting at my desk reviewing a compliance audit when my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. Surprise! I booked us a couple's retreat in Tulum. $6,000 on your card. I'm boarding now to get everything set up. Flight leaves for you tomorrow morning. I just stared at the screen. The text made absolutely no sense. I had major quarterly meetings on Friday, which she knew all about. Furthermore, I never gave her authorization to use my primary American Express Platinum card. I kept it in my wallet. She must have memorized the numbers and the security code at some point when my guard was down. I logged into my Amex portal immediately. Sure enough, under pending transactions, 2 massive charges stared back at me: a luxury eco-resort in Tulum for $6,000 and an airline charge for $1,850. I opened my personal email. Nothing. Operating on a hunch, I checked my deleted folder and finally, my trash bin. Bingo! There they were. 2 forwarded emails from the airline and the resort, sent from my account to her email address, and immediately scrubbed from my inbox. She had logged into my laptop at home before leaving for the airport. I opened the airline receipt, expecting to see a flight for her today and a flight for me on Friday, just like she texted. But that wasn't what the itinerary showed at all. There was no flight for me on Friday. The reservation was strictly for 2 passengers departing that exact afternoon. Passenger 1, my girlfriend. Passenger 2, her co-worker. This co-worker was a guy from her office. She always told me not to worry about. Her supposed work husband, who she claimed gave her great advice on our relationship. She had literally stolen my credit card information to fund a romantic, week-long getaway with another man. The text she sent me was a calculated distraction. She figured surprise text would keep me from scrutinizing the actual passenger names or the Amex portal until Friday, giving her a huge head start. She probably planned to claim she had to take him at the last minute because I was working. It was a brazen, insane gamble. Honestly, my heart rate stayed remarkably steady. I didn't feel the need to scream or punch a wall. The risk management side of my brain just completely took over. She had just crossed a massive legal line, and I was going to handle it by the book. I picked up my phone and replied to her text with 4 words: "Have a great trip." Then I dialed the number on the back of my Amex. I navigated the automated menus and got a fraud specialist on the line. I explained the situation calmly and clearly. Under the Fair Credit Billing Act, a consumer is protected against unauthorized charges. Because we were not married, had no joint accounts, and she was not an authorized user, her use of the card was straightforward credit card fraud. I told the representative I had physical possession of the card, and these charges were made online without my consent. I told him to flag the charges as fraudulent, halt the transactions, and cancel the card immediately. The representative verified my identity, initiated the fraud protocol, froze the pending authorizations, and issued a new card to my address. The old numbers were officially dead. I left the office early and drove straight home, calling a local locksmith from the car. By 4:30 p.m., a technician was drilling out the deadbolts on my front and back doors and replacing them with high-security electronic keypads. While the locksmith worked, I grabbed some heavy-duty garbage bags. I went through the bedroom, the bathroom, and the hallway closet, packing up every single item she owned. I loaded the bags into the back of my SUV, drove over to her apartment complex, used the spare key she kept in my car console to get in, and placed the bags neatly inside her living room. I left her key on her kitchen counter and walked out. She was currently somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico, completely oblivious that her safety net had just been torched. At 6:15 p.m., my phone started vibrating relentlessly. She had landed in Cancun. I ignored the first 4 calls. On the 5th, I finally answered. "Why is your card declining?" She didn't even say hello. She was already shouting, and it sounded like she was in a busy hotel lobby. We took the shuttle to the resort, and the front desk is trying to run the card for the incidental hold. It says invalid. They're holding our bags. Fix it right now. Notice how she said we? She was so deeply entrenched in her own entitlement that she didn't even try to hide the fact that someone else was standing right there with her. The card was compromised. I said, "I reported fraudulent charges to American Express this afternoon. They canceled the account." I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "What are you talking about?" "I texted you. I told you I booked the trip." "You texted me that you booked a couple's retreat for us." I replied, "I checked the deleted emails, though. I saw your coworker's name on the second ticket. You stole my credit card information to take another man to Mexico." "It is not like that," she shrieked. The volume of her voice definitely drew the attention of people around her, based on the sudden quiet in the background. "You were working all weekend. I needed a break. He was just coming as a friend, because you never make time for me. I was going to pay you back eventually. You committed wire fraud." I told her, "You can explain your payment plan to the front desk. Do not contact me again." I hung up and blocked her number. Here's the thing about hotel check-ins. They require a valid card not just for incidentals, but to finalize the pending authorization made during the online booking. When Amex flagged the transaction as fraud, they didn't just decline the new hold for room service. They voided the original $6,000 authorization entirely. The resort was looking at 2 guests standing in their lobby with an unpaid bill of $6,000. She didn't give up easily. Over the next 2 hours, my email inbox filled with security notifications. She tried logging into my banking app, my PayPal, and even my Amazon account to purchase digital Visa gift cards. Fortunately, I had already spent the previous hour cycling every single password I owned and enabling 2-factor authentication on everything. She was completely locked out of my life. When her digital theft failed, she tried social manipulation. My phone rang, and it was my mother. "What on earth is going on?" my mom asked, sounding panicked. "Your girlfriend just called me crying hysterically. She said you got into a huge fight, threw her out of the house, and canceled her debit card while she was traveling for work. She says she is stranded in Mexico with no safe place to sleep." The sheer audacity of the lie was staggering. She was trying to weaponize my own mother against me to extort money. "Mom, she is not traveling for work." I said, opening my laptop. "I am sending you an email right now. Look at it while we're on the phone." I forwarded the recovered flight itinerary and the hotel booking to her. I explained that she stole my credit card to book a luxury vacation for herself and a guy from her office. And when I found out, I reported the card stolen. I didn't cancel her debit card. She was just realizing she didn't have the funds in her own checking account to pay for a 5-star resort out of pocket. My mom was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her tone had shifted from panic to absolute ice. "I see. I will handle this." I later learned that my ex called my mom back 10 minutes later, still sobbing and begging for a short-term loan. My mom simply read the itinerary line by line, including the co-worker's name, informed her that she was a thief, and blocked her number. My ex was out of options, thousands of miles from home, and her lives were collapsing around her. I spent the weekend enjoying the peace and quiet. I went to the gym, watched football, and slept perfectly. Down in Tulum, it was a totally different story. I pieced together what happened later through mutual acquaintances. The co-worker, who apparently believed her lie that I had gifted them the trip because we were in an open relationship, suddenly found himself financially responsible for the entire vacation. To avoid being thrown out of the resort by the local police, he had to apply for a digital emergency credit card and max out his existing cards just to cover the $6,000 room rate and the mandatory deposit. Their luxurious romantic getaway instantly turned into a tense, resentful financial nightmare. But the real consequence was waiting for them at the airport on Sunday. When I filed the fraud report on Thursday, I didn't just flag the hotel. I flagged the airline charges too. Airlines take credit card fraud incredibly seriously. When the chargeback hit their system, the fraud prevention team immediately voided the ticket numbers associated with the transaction. So they showed up at the terminal in Cancun, exhausted and broke, only to be told by the ticketing agent that they had no seats. Their return flights were canceled due to unauthorized payment. She used an airport payphone to call my sister, begging her to pass a message to me demanding I purchase them new tickets home immediately and threatening to sue me for emotional distress. My sister just laughed and hung up. The co-worker had to completely empty his savings account to buy 2 last-minute, one-way international tickets on a budget airline, which included a 10-hour overnight layover in Houston. They finally landed in our city on Monday afternoon. I was working from home when the security camera on my front porch triggered. A rideshare pulled up, and my ex stomped up the driveway, dragging her suitcase. She looked exhausted, totally sunburned, and absolutely furious. She marched up to the door and shoved her key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. She tried again, jiggling the handle aggressively, before finally noticing the new electronic keypad. She started pounding on the heavy wooden door, yelling at me to open up. I walked to the foyer, opened the inner wooden door, but kept the reinforced glass storm door shut and locked. I stood in the entryway, just looking at her. "Let me in," she demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "You ruined my trip. You humiliated me. You owe me an apology, and I need to get my clothes for work tomorrow." "Your clothes are at your apartment," I said calmly. "I dropped them off on Thursday. You don't live here." "I am a tenant," she screamed, pointing a finger at the glass. "I get mail here. I sleep here. You can't legally lock me out. I am calling the cops and having them force you to let me inside." "Go ahead," I replied. "I'll wait." She actually pulled out her phone and dialed 911, dramatically narrating to the dispatcher that her abusive boyfriend had illegally evicted her and locked her out of her primary residence. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. An officer stepped out, and she immediately launched into her performance, crying on cue and claiming she was a victim. The officer listened patiently, then turned to me. I unlocked the storm door and stepped onto the porch holding a manila folder. "Sir, she claims she resides here," the officer said. "She is a guest who overstayed her welcome." I stated clearly, she maintains a separate lease. Here is a copy of the property records showing I am the sole owner of this house. Here is a copy of her driver's license, which I took a photo of previously, showing her address is an apartment downtown. She has never paid rent here. She committed credit card fraud against me last week, which is why she is no longer welcome on my property. The officer turned to her. "Ma'am, do you have your ID?" She hesitated, then pulled it out. The address perfectly matched the apartment downtown. The officer asked if she had a lease agreement for my address, and she argued that she didn't need one because she sleeps here. Sleeping here doesn't establish tenancy under state law. The officer explained firmly, "This is his property. He has revoked his permission for you to be here. This is a civil matter regarding your relationship, but legally, you are trespassing at this point." She started whining about her stuff, but I reminded her that I already put everything she owned inside her actual apartment and told her to use her own key. The officer gave her a stern look and told her she needed to call a ride and leave the premises, or she would be arrested for criminal trespass. The entitlement finally hit a concrete wall. She grabbed her suitcase, ordered another rideshare, and sat on the curb in complete silence until it arrived. The lock change was just the immediate defense, though. The actual consequences required patience and paperwork. On Tuesday morning, I drove to the local police precinct with my manila folder. It contained the Amex fraud affidavit, the forwarded emails with the timestamps, the IP address login logs from my router showing my laptop was accessed while I was at work, and screenshots of her text messages admitting to the $6,000 charge. I sat down with a detective in the financial crimes unit and walked him through the timeline. Because the total attempted theft was over $7,800, it exceeded the threshold for a felony in our state. I told him I wanted to press charges for identity theft and credit card fraud. The detective reviewed the text message where she literally admitted the exact dollar amount she charged on my card, shook his head, and said she made his job incredibly easy. They opened a formal investigation. Over the next 2 months, Amex concluded their internal investigation. Because I had the text message in the timeline, they formally ruled the charges fraudulent and permanently reversed them. The massive financial hit landed squarely on the resort and the airline. The airline blacklisted her and her co-worker, and the resort sent her account to a predatory international collections agency. Her co-worker's life also completely unraveled. He had drained his savings and tanked his credit score to fund the trip. When he realized my ex had absolutely no intention or ability to pay him back, he dumped her. He then filed a lawsuit against her in small claims court for $9,500, citing fraud and breach of verbal contract. But the criminal justice system delivered the final blow. Late in January, the detective secured an arrest warrant. They didn't even call her to turn herself in. 2 uniformed officers showed up at her office building on a Wednesday morning, walked right into her department, placed her in handcuffs in front of her manager and her colleagues, and escorted her to a squad car. She used her one phone call from the county jail to call me. The arrogance was completely gone, replaced by raw panic. She sobbed, begging me to pay her bail, promising she would do anything and pay me back. I just told her she stole from the wrong person and suggested she call her co-worker before hanging up. She spent 2 nights in jail before her parents finally drove in from out of state to post her bond. The state prosecutor took the felony case. A few weeks later, her defense attorney contacted me, asking if I would recommend a pretrial diversion program. Since she was a first-time offender, I flat out declined. I told the attorney I would fully cooperate with the state and testify at trial if necessary. I had zero interest in offering leniency to someone who felt entitled to steal my money and manipulate my family to fund an affair. Faced with the rock-solid text message evidence and my refusal to back down, her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. In May, she stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of Class A misdemeanor theft. The judge absolutely berated her for her calculated deceit. She was sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation, 100 hours of community service, and a strict restitution order to repay the airline and the resort. Because of the theft conviction, her company terminated her employment immediately. With no income, legal fees piling up, a destroyed credit score, and a judgment against her in small claims court from the co-worker, she was forced to break the lease on her downtown apartment and move back into her parents' basement 3 states away. I never saw her again. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I realized that entitlement is basically a parasite. It feeds on your leniency and your desire to keep the peace. The moment you stop subsidizing someone else's delusions, their entire reality collapses. I lost a girlfriend, but I gained absolute peace of mind, and the locks on my doors have never felt more secure. If you want to know how to spot massive red flags before they cost you $6,000 in Mexico, hit that subscribe